Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Last Wrestling Podcast, because if I have a wrestling podcast, everybody else in the world does too, and the concept is officially dead. Well, we just finished taking a look at Shinihon Puroresu, NJPW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, whatever you want to call it, Power Struggle in Osaka. That's already up on the channel. But right now it's time to look far away to the distant land of the United States of America as we take a look at AEW Full Gear, the most recent pay-per-view of All Elite Wrestling. Looking at the overall card, it looks fantastic. This looks to be one of the best cards AEW has ever put together. There's really only one match that kind of sticks out as not really belonging there. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Right now, we're going to take a look at the first match on this card, and that is a tournament final to determine the number one contender, or technically number two contender, to the AEW World Championship. And that is Kenny Omega versus Hangman Adam Page. 2 points before we go into this. One, I love the sort of Locutus of Borg special effects they have on all of these match cards. So credit there to whoever's doing the visual design of AEW. And we'll get to another part of that again a little bit later. In fact, by the end of this video, I'm going to refer back to something that happened at the very beginning of the pay-per-view. So, foreshadowing, yay. The other thing I'd like to point out is, I don't know why this match is happening. Okay, so tournament to crown number one contender. Fine. Here's the problem. You have a top 5 ranking system. Why is that not being used? Heck, Taz and Team FTW, bring that up on an episode of Dynamite 1 or 2 weeks ago, where they sort of pointed out, hey, wait a minute. We got a number one contender right here in Cage. He's the number one in the top 5. Why isn't he getting the title shot? What the heck's going on here? So, I don't know why they needed this tournament if they have a ranking system designed to find contenders for the AEW Championship. Of course, the real reason is they need an excuse to get Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page together, so don't think about it too much, I guess. Well, I think about it. That's my job. I examine the storytelling here. And so far, the storytelling in this match has actually been pretty darn good. This story goes back really to the very beginning of AEW, when Hangman Adam Page was one half of the match for the first ever AEW Championship. He failed. That gave him that sense of failure gave him a drinking problem. He eventually hooks up with the Elite and with Kenny Omega as a tag team. They become tag team champions. They're tag team champions for a really long time. And then they break up and they're sort of feuding, but they're still kind of friends. And Kenny Omega has sort of turned heel and sort of hasn't, but he's still kind of an asshole. And Hangman Adam Page clearly has a drinking problem and is kind of an asshole and is the good guy kind of when he does cowboy shit. And then they have a tournament where these two wind up facing each other because of course they do. And next step in the story! Stop me if this starts to sound convoluted. Something that AEW does better than almost any other wrestling company I have ever seen in my life is their acknowledgement of the rest of the wrestling world. Already in this show, we haven't even started the first match yet, we've had... we see here Don Callis from Impact showing up as a special guest commentator and Kenny Omega sycophant. We've had an NWA championship defended on the pre-show, successfully by the way, and we've had references to Chikara, we've had references to some little indie federation I've never heard of, and we've had, in Kenny Omega's entrance, explicit references to New Japan Pro Wrestling. Speaking of which, this is the first chance I've had to talk about Kenny Omega's new entrance on this show, and I frickin' love it for 2 reasons. One, if Kenny Omega's new character is that he is an egotistical heel who believes his own hype and is, kind of up his own backside, this is a wonderful entrance with all the bells and whistles, the pretty girls doing the dancing with the broomsticks, and the special effect with the screen that gets sucked away in a vacuum cleaner or something. It looks fantastic, and second, more importantly, what will make Kenny Omega a fantastic villain, every single accolade that gets read off by the ring announcer of Kenny Omega's, is true. He has won all those tournaments. He has gotten those awards. He has gotten those accolades. He does have that winning record, etc., etc., etc. This is good. The best villains are the ones with a point. The best villains are the ones who are convinced that they are the hero of the story, and they can almost convince you. Kenny Omega, with that entrance, becomes a villain that can almost convince you that he's the hero, and I freaking love it. As for the actual match itself, and by the way, if you want to see the actual matches, or pictures from the actual matches, buy the pay-per-view, please. I want people to be supporting AEW, so I'm going to show as little of the in-ring action as possible. I know I've talked about that before. I generally try to do that with these Last Wrestling Podcast live-ish reviews, but just as a reminder why I'm not showing you the high spots in the match, because I want you to buy the pay-per-view. But in the end, Kenny Omega wins with the Katayoka no Tenshi, or the One-Winged Angel in English, and good, simple storytelling here. Two former friends fighting each other, and they know each other so well that they can counter each other's moves. This was a match of move, counter hold, some great false finishes toward the end, and I think this actually did a good job as an opening match to sort of set the tone for the show. We'll see if the rest of the show can keep up. Now, the question is, where do we go from here? Kenny Omega will face either Jon Moxley or Eddie Kingston. Frankly, I would like to see either of those matches, but it does indicate to me that probably Moxley's going to win the main event because he's the clear-cut babyface, and he's going up against Kenny Omega, who by that point would be a full-fledged heel. Probably. Though I would love to see Omega Kingston as well, but that's because of my personal bias towards Eddie Kingston. Again, we'll talk about that later. As for Hangman Adam Page, probably going to go deeper into the bottle, and that story's going to get increasingly uncomfortable. Good times. So, very good match despite the narrative contrivance of having this match in the first place. Up next, the aforementioned match doesn't really seem to belong on this show. Orange Cassidy versus John 4 Silver of the Dark Order, one of the minions of the Dark Order, number 4 within that organization. And this doesn't really seem as big of a match. There's no real storyline here other than the Dark Order kind of screwed Orange Cassidy out of the TNT Championship a couple of times, and there has been a long-running feud there. But there's something a little special about this match. With the death of Chikara, I am no longer keeping Chikara kayfabe. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a match between Fire Ant and the Shard. And that is a match I really want to see. This match was mostly about establishing the character of John Silver, so let's do that. 10 pounds of muscle in a 5-pound bag. Pint-sized powerhouse, fine. But take a look at this picture. Tell me this guy doesn't have the best mean face, the best angry face that you've seen in a while. He also has a fairly good happy face. You see those scraps of fabric in his hands? Yeah, he tore off... No, not Fire Ant. It's not Fire Ant anymore. He tore off Orange Cassidy's pockets. He can't put his hands in his pockets if he doesn't have pockets. I happen to think that's hilarious. Aside from some of this goofy comedy stuff, the rest of the match was basically John Silver doing a lot of really impressive power moves for a man his size, and Orange Cassidy using his agility and guile to escape. And in the end, he hits the beach break, which amusingly for both Fire Ant and Orange Cassidy, that's a name that actually works, in order to pick up the victory, hand held up by Bryce Remsburg. And of course, the best friends are out there, and because I really want to say this, you've got to give the people what they want! I'm a dork. Up next, for the TNT Championship, it's Cody Rhodes defending against Darby Allin. The story going into this is that Darby Allin has never been able to successfully defeat Cody, though he has taken him to the limit, to a time limit draw at one point, every other match that they faced each other, Cody has come out victorious. Also, there's a story about who is going to be the face of TNT, the hard-working, the hard-working pretty boy, son of a plumber, or the face-painted, skateboarding, kind of punk, kind of countercultural, I guess. Maybe I'm too old to realize what counterculture is anymore. Darby Allin, and I think that's a terrible story. Who's going to be the face of the company? No. Who's going to be the champion? Who is going to be the champion? Face of the company, nobody bloody cares. That's WWE Sports Entertainment bullshit. The story they should be telling, or should be telling better, is you've got this young guy, this young lion, coming up who wants to take out the established star, but he's never been quite good enough to do it. Can he do it when the lights are on bright on global pay-per-view? Can he take the championship, the symbol of excellence, and prove that he is worthy? Leave all this face of the company stuff to Vince. Okay, I did not see that coming. Two things I want to talk about in this match. First is the manipulation of expectations. As I've mentioned before on this channel, I'm a magician. An amateur magician, a hobbyist, but still a member in good standing of the International Brotherhood of Magicians, etc., etc. One of the core fundamental principles of magic is that you need to be able to manipulate people's expectations. People think something is going to go somewhere, or something is going to happen in a certain way, and then, when it doesn't, that's what gets a reaction. If I place a coin in my hand, and then open my hand to reveal the coin is no longer there, well, that has defied your expectation. You expect, you put a coin in your hand, the coin's going to be there. But when it isn't, that's when you react. The finish of this match was professional wrestling sleight of hand. One of the common tropes in wrestling, so common it becomes a mechanic in the video games, is the sequence of reversed roll-ups. Wrestler A rolls up Wrestler B reverses so their opponent's shoulders are on the mat. There's another reversal, maybe another. Usually it only goes to 3 repetitions because rule of 3, but eventually somebody kicks out or somebody gives up on the sequence. And this is a common transition. It's never the end of a match. Until today! Darby Allin reverses a reversal of a roll-up and rolls up Cody Rhodes, incidentally. He does appear to have gotten his name back from WWE. I read a report that he wasn't going to use the name Cody Rhodes in a wrestling show because he kind of liked the idea of the American Nightmare Cody. That turned out to be a work, and I'm kind of happy about that. He's a Rhodes. Let him be a bloody Rhodes. Let's not have JR get the company sued every time he accidentally calls him Rhodes. But back to the point. Darby Allin is the new TNT champion, and brilliantly done. This actually was a multi-layered story. Not only did we have the feisty underdog story of Darby Allin versus Cody Rhodes, not only did we have the professional wrestling sleight of hand playing with your expectations, we also had a diversion into one of the other great conflicts. In writing, we talk about how all conflict can be boiled down to 3 great categories: man versus man, man versus nature, and man versus self. 99.99999999999999999% of conflict in professional wrestling is man versus man. It's wrestler versus wrestler. This was a match that was Cody versus himself. The entire match, he kept deviating from Arn Anderson's game plan. He kept getting angry. He kept getting frustrated. He lost his self-control. And very much, that cost him the match. Because there were several instances where he could have won the match if, as JR said, just grab a wrestling hold, 1,000 of them. So the immediate question was, what happens next? Does Cody get angry? Does Cody attack Darby? Does Cody contest the decision, saying, no, my shoulder was up, there's no way he got me on a roll-up? Or does he do the right thing and be a sportsman and be gracious in defeat? Yes, that is exactly what he did. Literally bending the knee to his opponent, acknowledging him as the better man on the night, and handing him his precious TNT Championship belt. And it looked fantastic, and it told a little potential bit of a story going forward of dissension in the Nightmare family, because as Cody was holding up the arm of Darby Allin in victory, look at the face of Arn Anderson. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not a happy grandpa. So, possible dissension in the ranks, but unfortunately that is a story that will have to wait for another day, because it's Taz! That's right, Taz comes out and runs his mouth as a distraction for the sneak attack by Team Taz, or Team FTW, or whatever they're calling themselves, Cage and Absolute Ricky Starks, which is a pretty silly nickname if you ask me, and they get into a little bit of a tug-of-war over the TNT Championship before Taz, calms everybody down and says, yeah, you're supposed to beat the two of them up now. And let's see, Cody gets thrown through the railing, Arn Anderson gets taken out and distracts the medics and the officials, and Darby Allin gets put through a light box and through the hood of a car and nearly gets his arm broken in a door before Will Hobbs, Will Hobbs, comes by and saves the day with a steel chair. Yes, they're really going back to that feud. So, okay, apparently that's what's up next for the TNT Championship is Team Taz. I don't have a problem with this. It's continuity. This is actually long-form storytelling. I like it. There's a history between this character, this new champion, and this stable of villains, so it makes sense that they would go back to that. No objections there. Backstage, we get a setup with the Natural Nightmares for a match on Dynamite against the Butcher and the Blade and the Bunny. Yes, the Bunny's back, and she's QT Marshall's bitchy ex-girlfriend that maxed out all his credit cards. That's fraud. That's not legal. You shouldn't be admitting to that on national television. You're dumb. And, they're going to have, speaking of copyrights we got back from WWE, apparently, they're going to have a bunkhouse match. Old school Dusty Rhodes gimmick. I love this. Fantastic match and a fantastic set of segments, top to bottom. Up next, in the women's match that makes the main show, it's Hikaru Shida defending the AEW Women's World Championship against the Native Beast, Nyla Rose, and with all wonderful, wonderful bias on my part, I am hoping for a victory and a 2-time championship reign by the Native Beast. She will also have Vicky Guerrero in her corner, and kudos to whoever came up with the segment on last week's Dynamite. The correct translation of sumimasen is excuse me. Well, damn it. Okay, so long story short, wrong person won, but I'm always going to vote for Nyla Rose over everybody else. But Hikaru Shida defends successfully in what was, if I'm being as objective as I can be, Nyla Rose's best match so far. Still a lot of smoke and mirrors to cover the fact that the best heel they've got in the women's division, bar none, is still kind of green and still kind of needs the chairs and the brawling on the outside and the tables and all of that stuff in order to make it credible that somebody like Hikaru Shida could beat up somebody who looks like Nyla Rose. But it worked very, very well. Vicky was fantastic in her role, complete pro, knows exactly what she's doing. However, I have 2 issues with this. One, let's take a look at Nyla's outfit for the night. Oh, girl. No. Okay, I am a huge fan of Mega Man / Rockman, and I love the details here. I love the pixelated NR on the back of the outfit. I love the Mega Man color scheme normally. I really like the yellow tassels on the right hand, on the right wrist, reminiscent of the color of the energy pellets traditionally shot by Mega Man's X-Buster, or Mega Buster, and I would love this if it wasn't such a horrible color on her. Good grief. So, yeah, I don't know who came up with that, and whoever they are, I don't think they need to be fired necessarily. Shot would be good, but not necessarily fired. But that is a minor quibble compared to this. After the match, Vicky Guerrero goes on one of her trademark temper tantrums, and then I'm not sure if you can quite see us in the snapshot here, but slaps Nyla Rose across the face. Now, the obvious reaction to this is, "Oh, lady, you done fucked all the way up." This should be Beast Bomb through the canvas time. This should be picking up Vicky Guerrero and throwing her through something pre-prepared. This should be an absolute beatdown. Screw you, Vicky. But no. Nyla just bows her head and follows Vicky out of the arena. Character assassination complete. It should be really hard to screw up Nyla Rose. But I think they may have just found a way to screw up Nyla Rose. This is WWE level crap. This is, oh, we've got this wonderful call-up from NXT that we can't possibly screw up, and they've screwed it up. Okay, maybe they'll find a way to salvage this. Maybe it turns out Vicky has blackmail, or there's a contract that Nyla can't get out of, or something, but oh, dearie, no. Complete shambles. Good match. Everything around it was a disaster. And speaking of what will probably be a good match with everything surrounding it being a disaster, segue, it's time for the Tag Team Championship match. What should be the dream match that everybody wants to see. It's the Flippy Spot Monkey guys versus the old school throwbacks. It's the Young Bakuzu, Vasasu, whatever the heck FTR stands for tonight. Okay, couple of issues with this. I am not going to deny that this is a dream match. I'm not going to deny that people have been fantasy booking this thing for years. I am not going to deny that these guys represent two completely different philosophies of tag team wrestling, and the building blocks are there for an obvious conflict. That is all true. Here's the problem. How they got here. Okay, again, AEW, allegedly, has a ranking system. You want to prove that the Young Bucks are good enough to face the tag team champions, the Revival, FTR. Okay, great. They were unranked because, as they've been telling the story, the Bucks have been losing a lot in AEW, which is good. They haven't been living up to their potential as the greatest tag team of all time. Por ejemplo, they don't have the belts, so obviously they're not the greatest tag team. Make them climb the ranks. Now, this means long-term booking, but AEW is actually good at long-term booking, usually. Give this 8 weeks of build. Have the Young Bucks cut a mission statement promo, either in the ring, on the stage, backstage, whatever. AEW has really good video production, so maybe do it that way with some clips of how badly they've lost a lot so far. And they say, okay, this has been a terrible year. 2020 has sucked for everybody. But we're going to make it suck just that little bit less. We're going to make something right in this world. We're going to make sure that the Young Bucks are the AEW World's Tag Team Champions. We want to be ranked. Tony Khan, give us an opportunity. AEW, we may be executive vice presidents of this company, but we don't actually make the matches. We don't have the authority. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, Triple H. We don't have the authority to just book ourselves in the main event. It doesn't work that way around here. But we are asking, give us a match. Give us something where we can prove ourselves. And then you do, then the next week, this is week 2 of 8, you do a tag team 4-way elimination match. The winner enters the top 5. Young Bucks, of course, win this match, and the Revival says nothing. This is number 5. This is beneath their notice. They've got 4 better things to worry about. So over the next 5 weeks, weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, and 6, you have matches between the Young Bucks and whoever's next on the list. And the Young Bucks win, and then they win, and then they win, and then they win. And with every victory, suddenly the Revival starts to take notice. Yeah, they're seen watching from the backstage. They're seen watching from the crowd. Eventually, they're seen watching from the stage, and as the Young Bucks become the number 2 contenders, they're told, okay, now you've got our attention. You want to fight us? Fine. But you've got tag team number 1 next week. You beat them, you get us at Full Gear. You get us, you get what you want, you get a brush with greatness, you get to face the champs for the straps. So you can build that. You main event your TV with that. That's, I think, week 6 I'm up to now of the build here. And the Young Bucks become number 1 contenders. FTR says, bring it on. Now, if you want to tell the injury angle, because they're currently doing, one of the Jacksons, Ann Jackson, has an ankle injury that they're playing up. Have that happen during this sequence of climbing the ranks. So you can sort of tell that story as it goes. It gets increasingly aggravated. And then you have a decision to make. Who are your faces? Who are your heels? And this is the other problem I've got with this, is that I'm not sure who's supposed to be who. I think the Bucks are the good guys because they're the Young Bucks, and they're the ones with everything to prove and everything to lose. We'll get to that in a minute. FTR, they're the bad guys because they're sticks in the mud, I guess. They have a heel manager, and now in my version, I don't want them causing the ankle injury. Maybe if we decide that they're going to be the bad guys, they aggravate it a little bit, or a lot, but after that number 1 contenders match, which gives us a week off to sort of ask, are the Bucks at 100%? Are they willing to do this? But the guys whose entire gimmick is we follow the rules are not the bad guys here. The Young Bucks, who have been super kicking announcers and cameramen and whoever for the last couple of months, are the bad guys. And no, one promo that, hey, we needed to do something to get our edge back, but we didn't quite like how that felt, so we're really sorry, pretty please with sugar on top, forgive us and call us the baby faces again. Except they didn't say I'm sorry. It was a non-apology apology, and I hate those. Anyway, back to the fantasy booking. Week 8. This is when you announce the stipulation that the Young Bucks, if they lose the match, will never challenge for the tag team titles again. They are incensed. They are offended by the questions that were asked in week 7. Can they do it? Are they good enough? Are they at 100%? And they're going to say, yeah, we're at 100%, and we're going to prove it by putting everything on the line. Now, the third thing on this, and this is something that I have a weird opinion on. Unpopular take incoming. I kind of like the idea that the Bucks have said that if they lose this match, they will never challenge for the tag team titles again. On the surface, that's a dumb stipulation and it telegraphs the finish. Here's the problem. In AEW, that stipulation has been used exactly once, and the guy who said it lost, and they've kept to that stipulation ever since. So, that is a stipulation with credit in AEW. So, I do kind of like this. I think it does telegraph the title switch in this case, but unless they're going to do a Young Bucks breakup angle, which would be an absolutely horrible idea, but I do like that bit of storytelling. So once again, the match itself looks good. How they got here is ridiculous. And I've been rambling on about this for like 10 minutes now. Let's just get to the bloody match. Before I talk about the actual match, let's take a look at our second fashion disaster of the show. What the heck was that? You look like the pit crew at a NASCAR race. But it does not matter, because after One of the best tag team matches I have seen in a very long time. The Young Bucks are the new AEW World's Tag Team Champions, and now the stipulation that I will never challenge again has been invoked once and dodged once, and still has credit in AEW. Love that. This was a brilliant, brilliant piece of tag team wrestling. Honestly, makes me even sadder that it was let down by the build. Just some of the highlights. The super kick with the injured leg into the injured hand of one of the FTR guys. That was actually a running plot line through the whole match, that at least one member of each team was handicapped from doing what they do. Damaged hand, no fists. Damaged leg, no flips. And then, kind of like when years ago, when Naito Tetsuya fell to the Stardust Genius, Revival loses when they do FTR. Why do I keep doing that? FTR loses when they do a flip. Springboard 450 from, I think it was Dax, maybe? I'm not sure. Could have been Cash. But that goes into a super kick, and the injured Jackson literally falls on top of his opponent, completely destroyed. 1, 2, 3. Brilliant, 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 brilliant match. I'm not doing it justice. Find a way to watch this. This is great wrestling. This is great tag team wrestling, and probably the best tag team match AEW has ever done. And then we had a very nice piece of subtle storytelling after the match. Take a look at the picture. You'll notice that a Wild Kenny Omega has appeared, celebrating with his friends and reuniting at least this part of the Elite. They teased a breakup or a frustration thing when Kenny and Hangman lost the titles. But there was something subtle. Excalibur called attention to it, didn't out and out say what was going on, but said, "Hey, who is that?" Take a look at the right hand from your perspective, on the right hand entrance tunnel. That looks a whole lot like a Wild Hangman Page. Standing in the back, not part of the party, not part of the celebration, not part of the Elite, a man alone, the lone cowboy. And this was never acknowledged by the characters in the ring. This was barely acknowledged by the announcers. But I love that little Chekhov's gun, that little bit of foreshadowing. I don't know where that's going, and I like that I don't know where that's going. Up next, it's the Elite Deletion. I don't like that this feud is continuing, but if it is going to, I'm glad it's going to be a cinematic match from the Hardy compound, because I don't want Matt Hardy to die. I really, really don't. Smoke, mirrors, magic tricks, chair of wheels, mower of lawn stuff, please. I really like the Broken Universe. I like supernatural stuff in my wrestling. So let's see if they can recapture the magic of the Broken Hardy universe. What the hell do I add to that? Okay, that was the best Hardy stuff I've seen in like 4 years. That was incredible. Okay, cameos from here to next week. Gangrel shows up, explaining why he's there. A lot of fourth wall breaking. The Hurricane was there. I love the Hurricane. One of my favorite characters of all time. We got to see him hit the eye of the Hurricane on somebody. Private Party shows up. The rest of the Inner Circle shows up, except for Jericho and Hager. This was great. There was multiple attempted murders. There was attempted vehicular homicide. There was, as you can see in the picture, an assault with a firearm, essentially. I mean, I know the big rule is no guns in wrestling. This is basically guns in wrestling, and it was awesome. And, oh yes, of course, a great callback to we're late enough in the video. A great callback to the fuck up heard around the world when Hardy sends Sammy Guevara through a couple of tables and he cracks his head open and bleeds all over the place. But as I was watching through the entire thing, there were a few good camera cuts, and I'm hoping things were a little more fake than they usually are in wrestling. Basically, this was a very good Magic show, and we got cameos also from Queen Rebecca. We got Senior Benjamin, and I think Senior Benjamin got the pop of the night so far. It was, honestly, nothing to complain about here. Fully recommended. Find a way to see this. Just, wow. I think this is something they can go back to. But now, if we ever see Sammy Guevara again, as he literally gets thrown in the trash and driven off the compound by Senor Benjamin, assuming Sammy Guevara is not kayfabe dead, there needs to be an explanation of how he comes back, and this needs to be an inciting incident for something. This feud is over, but this needs to change Sammy Guevara. Up next, we apparently have words from Jake the Snake Roberts. On the plus side, how lucky are you with your roster if the third worst talker in your company is frickin' Taz? Number 2 right now being Jake Roberts. Number 1, I'm gonna say it, Eddie Kingston. Negative. Nothing of consequence was said here. Just reminding you that the I can never say it, the Murder Hawk Monster wants a match. He wants food. He wants blood. And he's coming for everybody. And let's just get to the next match. Another match where I don't know where they're going with this, and I love that. Jericho, MJF. If MJF wins, he is in the inner circle. I'm actually going to make a prediction here. I think MJF wins, and this is the first step towards him taking over the inner circle and kicking Jericho out of his own group so that Jericho can have the face run that he pretty clearly obviously wants. Is MJF the next Chris Jericho, or is MJF the next Eddie Guerrero? Yes, he pulls the old lie, cheat, and steal, drop down to the mat before your opponent hits you, make it look like they hit you, and get them just nearly disqualified, but actually it was a roll-up finish. 1, 2, 3. The match itself, the rest of the match, honestly, while there was a concise story of showing that, or trying to show that MJF is on Jericho's level, honestly, it was a match between a still growing but still green MJF and a frankly past his prime Chris Jericho. It was good. It was not great. It was okay. It didn't live up to, frankly, the couple of matches before it. So maybe this should have been a little further down the card. I don't know. In the end, Jericho admits that he lost, shakes the hands of MJF, and welcomes him to the inner circle. More evidence that I think Jericho really wants to be a babyface, and they're slightly turning him that way. At least, if he does turn face, that would make it okay that everybody sings his bloody entrance song. Why are you singing the song of a heel? I don't get that. They also tease a little dissension already, or a conflict between Wardlow and Jake Hager. Frankly, that is not a match I want to see, but we're probably going to get it anyway. Backstage, we get a promo trying to get an interview with Orange Cassidy, which seems like, frankly, an exercise in futility, if you think about it for more than half a second. But, of course, it's just a setup for them to be interrupted by Miro and Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford, and apparently that rivalry is going to continue because they broke a video. How do you screw up Rusev? This is the second time I've had to ask this tonight. How do you screw this up? Ugh. I need to move on now. Finally, it's time for the main event of the evening. Jon Moxley defending the AEW World Championship against Eddie Kingston in an I Quit match. But remember way back at the beginning of the video where I said that there was a little Chikara reference at the beginning of the show? Well, I'm going to explain that right now. During the opening video package, we see a brief flash of the past of Eddie Kingston prominent amongst this was this man. You probably don't know who this is. No, that is not a young Jon Moxley. It's certainly not a young Eddie Kingston. That is sweet and sour Larry Sweeney. Seen here holding the second iteration of the Chikara Young Lions Cup, which he held proudly. A mainstay of the early days of Chikara alongside Eddie Kingston. Apparently they were great friends. Larry Sweeney, rather unfortunately, took his life in 2011. The tournament to crown the first Chikara Grand Champion was named the 12 Large Summit after a catchphrase of Larry Sweeney's. And that tournament was won by Eddie Kingston. I know that Eddie has to say that he's never been a champion, that the only title that matters is the AEW World Championship because he's in AEW now. But it is a bald-faced lie to say that that man has never been a champion. He was the first Grand Champion of Chikara. And right now, he's trying to cheat on her. That's what he called that championship in the darkest times of Chikara, some of the darkest times of my personal life, both as a human being and as a wrestling fan. It was all about her. Eddie, there's zero chance you're going to hear this. I know you've got to say it, but you're cheating on her, baby. Before we get to the match, a couple of notes. First, your official for this contest, Mr. Bryce Remsburg. The first Chikara Grand Champion, and the heart and soul of Chikara, the senior official, and the second to last director of fun. Chikara is dead. Chikara lives on. Well, that was certainly not a Chikara match, but before we get to the match itself, take a look at this picture. At the very bottom of the screen, I've highlighted it with an arrow here. There appears to be a little piece of green or yellow tape on the back of the AEW World's Championship, Pretty Platinum, which I hate that nickname, by the way, the championship, that indicates this way up. Awesome! One of my pet peeves in wrestling, something I absolutely hate from a visual standpoint, is when somebody holds up a championship belt and they're holding it up upside down. That's disrespectful to the title, and I love that AEW has that little attention to detail to make sure nobody ever holds the belt up upside down. Love it. In the end, after an absolutely brutal bloodbath of a match, with his arm wrapped in barbed wire, Jon Moxley chokes out Eddie Kingston, and he does audibly say, "I quit." It is picked up by the camera, but it's very, very faint. That said, I'm so happy they didn't do the whole referee with a microphone shoving it in the wrestler's face every 20 seconds. This match had for an I Quit match, which usually is herky-jerky as anything, except maybe a last man standing match, this was actually done very, very well. Bryce Remsburg continues to be the best referee in the business because of his reactions, his facials, his body language. Brilliant. And while it's not my cup of tea, I don't like hardcore matches, I don't like garbage wrestling, I don't like thumbtack spots, but if you like that kind of stuff, this was an excellent example of it being done very, very well. After the match, Moxley makes one more attempt to help Eddie Kingston out by trying to help him to his feet. Kingston, of course, having none of that, but he does leave the arena under his own power. Moxley celebrates his victory when a wild Kenny Omega appears, and they have a rather nonchalant stare down to end the show. We did get an announcement during the show that the next pay-per-view is going to be in February, so they've got months to build to this match, assuming that is when this is going to happen. Final thoughts. This was a very good show. The only problem was that there was a lot of it. Best match of the night would be the tag team match, in my opinion. The main event, second to that. I loved the Elite Deletion. I'm glad that the Broken Universe is back and being done well, and that Hardy's willing to do this stuff instead of trying to still be the Matt Hardy from 20 years ago. And all in that, there really wasn't a bad match. The closest thing to a bad match was probably the Jericho MJF match, and I think that was just incompatible ingredients, but it served an excellent storyline function. And that was the best thing about this show. Everything served a storyline function. Everything was meant to be there. Maybe you could have cut the promo with the Murder Hawk monster, but other than that, that's like 1 minute out of a 3+ hour show, 3.5 hour show that didn't entirely accomplish anything. However, it does violate the rule of being too long for a wrestling show, so it does lose an automatic half grade to its final score. Ladies and gentlemen, the final score, the final grade for AEW Full Gear 2020 is an A-. If they hadn't gone on so darn long, it would have been perfect. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, if indeed you still are. I'm Ryu Sensei. This has been the Last Wrestling Podcast. Catchphrase sign off.